Hello, everybody. Welcome back to part two of Be the Bridge. We have been in great discussion in our first segment, but we mentioned the College Hill podcast. And so we really want to tell you a little bit about that. It has its own Facebook page as well, just like Be the Bridge, but that's Southeast Tennessee region.
Yes.
Yes. And then there's College Hill podcast. And just to set this up before we get in and start talking about it a little bit, is Jake, why don't you sum up how we came on with this idea and what we hope to gain?
Sure.
Okay.
The short story is that in our first Be the Bridge group, which Tony and I co-hosted, since then there's been two more, and there'll be more Be the Bridge groups coming.
Yes.
But in that group, one of the last things we talk about is this topic, which is popular in media right now, of reparations.
Yes.
And what does that mean? And I came in excited about some idea that I don't even remember the idea now. And my black friends that were in the room said, that's not a good idea. So we began to brainstorm other ideas. And what had really emerged during our conversations was the rich history of the College Hill neighborhood, the structure of College Hill as a historic site and school, and really all of the southeast, northeast, southeast side of Cleveland that historically has been overlooked, and residents and leaders from that part of our great history haven't been recognized nearly as well as they should and celebrated for their leadership in our community. So it's both the hardships that were experienced there, that from a white person who has been very privileged, to realize the hardships historically that have happened right here in our little small town of Cleveland.
Yes.
Was
the city of spirit.
That's right. That's right. There's a lot of really devastating things that happened to the black community that we need to know about. And then there's also power and strength in that community and resilience that is beautiful and transformative that we need to celebrate. So that was the idea that emerged, to do some reparations for our community. How beautiful would it be if we were able to effectively tell the story of the history of College Hill through the eyes and perspective of residents and business owners and teachers who lived that and who know the history and who've been there. So we wanted to tell this, and really it's the story of all small southern towns.
Yes.
It's not just Cleveland. So I think that people will find commonality between here and similarities in other towns. So I have hopes that this podcast will be eye-opening for everybody that lives in Cleveland for sure, but I think it will really help other people as well. So we're excited to offer this United Way Be the Bridge Alderman group, to offer this as a gift of reparations to our community, to say we're sorry and we celebrate both. We repent, but we also want to rejoice of the richness and the beauty of this. So that's the goal.
Well said.
Thank you. I've been learning from Olympia.
She's been teaching
Olympia passed her notes to you during
That's right.
And Olympia, I know that your family are big residents of College Hill, and I am a transplant here, so that's why I'm going to bounce this to you. But in terms of being a resident of Cleveland, and in particular growing up in the College Hill area, from your perspective, how well do you think this will also be received by the black community?
I think that it's a beautiful thing, first and foremost. And whenever your intentions and your heart is to honor and respect the community, that it's just going to be received that way.
Yeah.
And so people have been really excited about it, even in the process of going to different people in the community and saying, hey, we want your story.
Yeah.
Because it was particularly important to me that the younger generation be able to hear the stories of their parents and grandparents and great-grandparents. That has so much to do with our own identity and our own personal development journey. So I've seen a lot of excitement in the community from residents here that the memories that they get to sit back and rehash and remember things that they hadn't thought about in a long time, and it's exciting. It really is.
Well, Rob, you have had the privilege to lead us through this process. You are the podcast guru. And so you and your team have had the opportunity we have completed the first couple of interviews. And we hopefully will have a minute of it that we're going to launch next week on this Facebook page, on Transforming Greatness Facebook page,
And on WTMB.
and WTMB TV's Facebook page. So, but I would love for you to share your experience. Take the next
Sure.
2 to 3 minutes and share your experience as being the interviewer of all these great people we've had the pleasure to interview and get to know better.
Your testimony, Rob.
Your testimony, Rob. Hallelujah.
Well, I do want to start by saying I actually do think that the word privilege is appropriate. It is my privilege. I am truly blessed to be a part of this. Our whole team feels that way. This is something that we love to do, and the honest truth is that we do a lot of podcasts for a lot of people. We create them at the Alderman Group, and what made this really interesting for me first, what kind of got me hooked, was that I didn't know anything about Be the Bridge. That was not a thing I was even aware was going on. And it was that at some point, all of you got me in a room and somebody used the word reparations. And I found that so fascinating because in white culture, right, we have built into our culture the need to have an answer. And we say from the time we speak to our young boys, right, we say, don't bring me a problem, bring me a solution, right? And we have a systemic racism issue in our country that is not that simple. And I feel like culturally it actually, believe it or not, it locks those. I believe white privilege exists. Let me say that clearly. If anybody has been at all confused about what Rob Alderman thinks, I believe it exists, right? And I'm aware of it in my own life. And that doesn't mean I'm fully woke or something like that. It just means that I agree that there have been a lot of things in my life, hurdles I didn't have to jump that a minority of my same age would have had to really navigate, okay? But one of the places that I feel like white people find ourselves really disadvantaged in the conversation is our own culture. It's not about the fact that minority cultures are holding us up to some sort of standard, as actually that we internally have our own triggers that you don't even necessarily know about. And one of those is have a solution. So when we look around and we see a country that has racism, none of us wants to even talk till we have some sort of an answer, right? So then we don't talk. And so then nothing ever happens. And when you use the word reparations, I was so fascinated that a podcast could be that, right? Because I had only ever heard of reparations being talked about in the traditional way. That seemed, to me personally, ludicrous that we could give a bunch of minorities some money and hope racism went away, right? And I now that we've been doing this podcast for months and months, I haven't met a single minority who thinks that that's what reparations ought to be, right? But it's what a lot of white people think, and we think, well, that doesn't seem like a solution, so then we don't even discuss it. So you had me at that. You had me all the way because I believe in the power of story, and I believe that there is a power in knowing our history. I believe that for College Hill, and I believe that for the non-minority people in Cleveland too, to understand that College Hill's story is a part of their own story, right? That we have a part of town here that, frankly, most people have no idea. They drive through it on their way to the river, and they don't stop, and there's no reason to stop, and there are actually historical moments in our history that have made it a non-destination.
Right.
And I can't think of a thing I could do in my life with the skills that I have personally or that our team has that could be more worth my time than trying to sow love and truth and grace into the story of College Hill. And for me, that means being the listener. And that's the role that I play in the podcast, is I'm there to listen. And hopefully, I know it has been powerful for me.
Mm-hmm.
And what we hope is that it will be powerful for others when they hear it.
Okay. All right. Well, I got just a couple of things I wanted just to comment a little bit on what we've been talking about with that podcast, because I also think for us, and when I say that, just speaking for, let me back up, not us. Speaking for me and being a part and listening to the podcast, the interview, and being there, it was very emotional for me.
Yeah, sure.
You're very right about this is any, this could be any
Right.
small town, but it could be any place,
Right.
really, in America where a group of people, because of racial divide,
Right.
they lived on a particular side of town.
Right.
Because when I think back of where I grew up in Richmond, Kentucky, all those memories came flooding
Yes.
back.
Yes.
I remember living in Cincinnati, Ohio, and hearing people talk about the West End, and that's where majority of the blacks grew up until gentrification came in. And I'm just going to put it out there.
That's right.
No,
So-
say it. Yeah.
So, sitting here, we talked about so much and why everybody was excited about when President Obama won the first time. It wasn't even about politics. It was what it represented to the black community, what it represented for my grandmother who normally didn't walk very well, but threw that cane aside and said, I don't need the wheelchair because I am walking to cast my vote because I thought I would never see this in my lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
And so just going through all of that, and you're right, you can't put a price on telling the story, honoring people for who they are, and recognizing the contributions they have made, not only to their community, but to this community and
That's
to
right.
society. Powerful, powerful, powerful. And I don't want the last word, but I'm going to toss it back to you guys about why we want to encourage everybody when we announce how we're going to launch it and how they've got to get involved and promote this and share this and all that. So I'm giving that back to Olympia or Jake.
Let me take this one first, Jake. I just want to say, these types of conversations can be very uncomfortable, but you see, even at our table here, we have 4 different people with 4 different perspectives. We see things completely different.
Yes.
Our political views are different.
Yes.
Everything about us is different. But when we talk about Be the Bridge, when we talk about racial reconciliation, there is this unity at the table.
Yes.
And that comes from the amount of time that we put in together. We had moments where we're, working through some of the turbulence that comes along with different identities and personalities. But at the end of the day, we can sit here and have this conversation.
Yes.
And it feels natural.
Yes.
And that's the goal. And I think that as people commit to stepping outside of their comfort zone, to going to the podcast, the Facebook page, for agreeing to go through a Be the Bridge group, you can get to that place where you can discuss race with people that are not like yourselves. And it be a conversation, not an argument, not
Yes.
something that's hurtful and harmful, but something that is productive with clear communication.
Thank you for saying that. Now, what's our goal beyond this? Real quick.
We want to continue having groups. I think that would be a main goal, to facilitate another group of people gathering together to have these conversations. And we're willing to come talk to your schools or businesses and get this message out to the community, to everybody that's willing to listen.
Follow our Facebook page. Follow our Facebook page. Follow our Facebook page.
Follow. Go to
At
Facebook,
College Hill
at
dash a
College Hill.
podcast.
Yes, do that. Also, go to Be the Bridge
Southeast
region,
region.
and be a friend there as well. And there's information we're putting up out there. But most of all, you can contact any of us here in the community. We don't have a number. We need to get a central number. We know that, and that's coming. But we really hope the community will rise up. The city of Spirit will rise up and lead the way to reconciliation. Thank you for joining us today. God bless.
Jake, you were